Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the massive patriotic pageantry surrounding the brand new Teddy Roosevelt Presidential Library out in Medora, North Dakota. Officially opened by President Donald Trump on July 1st, 2026, this event actually kicked off the celebrations just days before America's 250th anniversary. We are going to explore the absolutely wild logistics of the day, the incredible history on display, and the massive effort behind building this living monument. So the sheer scale of these July 1st celebrations was just off the charts. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill ribbon cutting. It was a full-blown kickoff for the nation's semi-quintennial. And organizing an event of this magnitude in such a rugged rural setting, it presented some truly unique logistical hurdles, along with a few very high-profile premieres. Talk about a wild contrast in style, right? On one hand, you had the ultra-modern debut of a brand new Air Force One, a Boeing 747 making its maiden voyage after being gifted to the United States by Qatar the previous year. But then, for the final arrival, there was this sharp pivot back to tradition. The president actually disembarked from a Freedom 250-themed train to greet the massive crowds. Now imagine trying to squeeze thousands upon thousands of attendees into the tiny town of Medora. Security was incredibly tight, with magnetometers set up blocks and blocks away. Since there's literally only one road in and out of town, you can imagine the traffic jam spreading like wildfire before 6 a.m. local time. Organizers actually had to set up parking 12 miles away and use dozens of yellow school buses just to shuttle everyone in. You could really feel the energy on the ground when talking to folks waiting in those endless shuttle lines. North Dakota rancher James Walker pretty much hit the nail on the head, noting that having the president there for the 250th is a generational moment, something their kids and grandkids will be talking about for years to come. And to top off that historical pageantry, the presidential motorcade didn't just roll in quietly. Nope, it was escorted by horseback riders meticulously dressed as Teddy Roosevelt's famous Rough Riders. If you know your history, you'll remember this was the first volunteer U.S. cavalry from the 1898 Spanish-American War, universally known for their bravery. Seeing them ride right alongside modern armored SUVs truly blurred the lines between past and present. When it came time for the official ribbon-cutting ceremony, President Trump laid out the grand vision for the 96,000-square-foot facility. He described it as a living monument in the Rough Rider state, completely dedicated to a man who embodied the frontier spirit of the country. It's designed as a space filled with immersive experiences to keep that legendary legacy alive. Visually, the building itself is an absolute architectural marvel. It was intentionally designed not to disrupt, but to seamlessly blend right into its natural environment. The structure perfectly complements the colorful buttes and rugged terrain of the neighboring Little Missouri River Badlands and the Theodore Roosevelt National Forest. It feels like an organic extension of the land Roosevelt loved so deeply. All right, let's step inside because the artifacts here are genuinely fascinating. As the museum's first official visitor, the president brought a very special delivery. For years, Theodore Roosevelt's Medal of Honor sat on display in the Roosevelt Room of the White House. But for this grand opening, it was personally transferred to the new museum, finally giving it a permanent home right in the heartland. Now, here's how they've actually divided up Roosevelt's history geographically, which is super insightful. If you're looking for his official presidential papers, those are staying put, safely housed at the Library of Congress and Harvard University. However, this new library in Medora serves a completely different, much more intimate purpose. It is the definitive home for his deeply personal and honestly, sometimes shocking physical artifacts. And when I say shocking, I mean literally life-saving artifacts. The museum features one of the most legendary items in American political history, the actual 50-page speech manuscript from 1912. Because it was so thick, when an assassin fired point-blank at Roosevelt, this very document miraculously slowed the bullet, essentially saving his life. It's a wild physical testament to his unbelievable resilience. It honestly gives you chills because the visceral reality of that day doesn't stop with the manuscript. Right alongside it, the exhibit boldly displays the very shirt Roosevelt was wearing during that exact assassination attempt, still stained with his blood. It's one thing to read about history in a textbook, but it's an entirely different experience to stand inches away from the blood-stained fabric of a president who took a bullet and just kept right on speaking. Taking a step back from those intense artifacts for a second, the location of this library in North Dakota is deeply symbolic. It was actually Roosevelt's grueling early experiences as a rancher right here in this rugged terrain that forged his lifelong vision for sustainable land management. That's the very vision that ultimately inspired the creation of the National Park Service, shaping the American landscape as we know it today. And that vision? Well, it translates to one staggering number: 230 million. Across his 2 terms in office, Theodore Roosevelt successfully preserved a whopping 230 million acres of American land, forever cementing his legacy as the nation's foremost conservationist. To help wrap your head around that colossal achievement, just look at what those 230 million acres actually represent. We're talking 5 national parks, 150 national forests, and 18 national monuments. He also established the U.S. Forest Service and 51 federal bird reserves, effectively laying the permanent blueprint for the national wildlife refuges we all cherish today. Fast forward back to today, bringing this whole project to life took some serious doing over several years. The facility sits on 90 acres of federal land, which was designated via a bill signed during President Trump's first term. For the opening, he was joined by Interior Secretary and former North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, marking the president's very first state visit of his second term. As the U.S. officially kicks off its 250th birthday party with this grand opening, I want to leave you with this thought. When we look at bloodstained shirts, massive conservation records, and stunning architecture, how do these physical spaces and artifacts actually help preserve the spirit and sustainable vision of our historical figures for generations to come? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.